big hip swing, more muscular turn.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Europe is Coming podcast. We are live on YouTube, welcome back to the pod. If you are listening to the recording the next day or later in the week, hope you're having a good day, morning, evening, whatever time it is when you're listening to us. And I'd like to start by saying hello to John. How are you, John?
I am good. I think, as I just mentioned, it's been a pretty standard week, which is nice. Just allows to get lots of work in. But it's also another eventful week in the fitness world as well.
Yeah. So you've not been doing any backcountry skiing this week or snowboarding. It's back to normality. But like you said, the fitness world, there seems to, with the Open going on and lots of other things, we've had an eventful week from that perspective.
Yeah, it's just I mean, I was going to cover everything, but the last 2 weeks things have really seemed to take off, which is following our prediction.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. So where would you like to start this week? Have you got something on top of mind that you want us to start with?
No, I mean, I was speaking of predictions. You take another win of the Colton. I was forced into a corner though with that one.
Yeah, I know. You asked me first, so I kind of felt bad because I basically got to kind of choose which avenue we went down on that one. But if you didn't listen to last week's podcast, John is referring to whether Colton Mertens would get beaten for last week's Open workout, 26.1, and he just got pipped. And the thing I will say that I was quite pleased I managed to call was that would be one guy that went sub 11.
1 second.
1 second.
Actually, those guys, Bjartny was the winner of the 24 crown. So those the two Icelandic.
No way.
Yeah, so it was quite cool to see because Bjartny and Rockvi, who were 1 and 2 in the guys, they were both at the crown 24. And then Bergros, who was also at the crown 24, was then 5th in the female. So it's like that next generation, obviously we've spoken about the depth a lot. There might not be the depth, but the fitness of the ones that are there is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, unreal. So I'll pull up the leaderboard. So if you are catching us on video and on the live stream, you will be able to see what we are talking about. And I was actually going to ask because I didn't recognize either of the gents who from Iceland. I won't try and pronounce their names. You did a much better job than I'm going to do by doing it. So apologies, fellas. But their names I'm not familiar with, and I was assuming they were kind of new talent coming out. Can you tell the people listening a little bit more about them? I know you went into detail that they were part of the crown.
Yes,
Do you know anything else that you could share?
I mean, I think honestly, they're both Icelandic specimens. I mean, I think I always have a bit of a bias towards Iceland as well because it's got so much history in the sport. Obviously, spending so much time there. They both train at CrossFit Reykjavik, which has just been brought out by Björgvin. They're like the biggest fans of Björgvin you could ever meet. Actually, at the World Fitness Project, they got a whole group of them and painted on their chest Björgvin's name to cheer him on.
I remember seeing that on the broadcast. No way.
Yeah, you could, which would have been those guys, and they're super talents. They've suffered a bit with injuries, which is a shame, but you kind of get to see what they do when they're healthy. So I mean, hopefully they come through. And actually, they just announced they're going to be doing a team.
No way.
Yeah, these two guys, Gucci, who's another Icelandic girl who actually trained, and this is a name I always get wrong, but in Björgvin's hometown, which is called Kvilligeri, which is just butchered as well. But that's where his basement gym was. Gucci was a coach there, and also is now on that team. And then also, I forget the girl's name, but was with CrossFit Sport, which is where Thuri was for a few years. So actually, it's going to be a very competitive team. A lot of people might not know the team members as such, but it's actually going to be quite competitive.
One to look out for, and we'll obviously cover it on the podcast, I'm sure, in weeks to come. And that the reason I asked you about them, because I do think there'll be a lot of people who suddenly being trying to look up who these guys are.
Yeah.
How old are they, out of interest?
Ooh, I don't. But they're going to be like 19, maybe.
Oh, okay. So some future prospects out of Iceland, as you mentioned, steeped in history, and actually, this is probably the first time we've not had Icelandics kind of vying for the crown of fittest on earth for quite a while. Like usually, the Icelandics have always been podium contenders and in the top 10, but
Yeah.
with aging out and some Annie and retiring and some of the other athletes kind of not in and around it. Bjorgvin obviously sort of still competing, which is amazing, but we haven't really got the Icelandic core that we used to. So it's cool to see some younger athletes coming through.
Yeah, 100%. And for such a small population, they've really dominated the sport.
Yeah, and they both. I mean, the times are again really really strong for this workout on the guys' side. 10:59. Thank you very much for helping me not look like a fool, saying that I reckon a guy would go sub 11, and then 11:05. So unreal times from both of them. And I'm pipping Colton, unfortunately. So yeah, that's pretty much 26.1 on the guy side. On the, let me switch it over.
I will say though, do we mention Miriam? We did. Miriam's time was already in, but she put her video out.
I saw her video.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's pretty insane to watch. I think it might be one of the best CrossFit performances of all time, which is not a small statement to make.
Yeah, that is a big call.
But it's just incredible. I mean, she runs to the box, and it's almost like sometimes she's running so quickly from the box back to the wall balls that when she picks up the wall ball, she's falling forward. It's like just a ridiculous time.
Yeah, it does show you just how far she's going. And again, if you're with us on video, you'll be able to see that I'm hovering over. There's a little video icon on the leaderboard now, so you can click on there. It's also on YouTube. If you just search for it, you'll find it. But it is, as John mentioned. Oh no, sorry. The video on the leaderboard here is for 26.2. I do apologize, but the video is on YouTube. You can watch it. Highly recommend watching 26.1 Miriam Van Roor's time. It was it's pretty phenomenal, pretty outstanding stuff. So this is overall. Let me quickly just flick back to 26.1 so we can see the standings for that. So as we talked about last time, Miriam Van Roor came in at top and Lucy Campbell in second. And then we also got Kira McManus jumping up there as well.
Yeah, who I actually believe is another. I think she's only like 16 or 17 years old.
Wow,
which is pretty crazy.
Then Andra Moistus from Estonia in fourth, and then oh god, I'm really sorry. I'm gonna have a crack.
Bergros. Okay, sorry.
Bergros. Bjornsdottir from Iceland in fifth. So a top 7 from Europe on the women's side for 26.1, which is awesome.
Yeah, and thankfully we had the Icelandic guys. Otherwise, Europe would not have looked as good on the male side.
No, for sure. So yeah, I mean, reasons to be really cheerful for our podcast. And then we talk a bit about Hyrox. So we mentioned Lauren Weeks last week. Excuse the pun. She stuck around in 8th in the end, 11:10, which is a really serious time. So just showing how well-rounded her fitness is, and obviously it plays to Hyrox, the first workout. A lot of commentary around that, but still a really great time.
Yeah, agreed. It's very impressive, these cross-sport athletes.
Absolutely. So, should we have a look at 26.2 and then review the scores of that? What did you think of this workout?
I quite liked it. I think actually that was my prediction came in with the ascending difficulty of gymnastics. I like that format of especially a qualifier workout, because it gives everyone a bit of a shot. I think in general it was like a really solid workout. I thought it was interesting. The one interesting thing about it was that last week basically no one finished, and then this week a lot of people had a lot of time looking at the rings. But I think that since the inception of the Open, they've kind of used it as a people love the first muscle up, and so it gives that opportunity for people to have the time to try and get that. So I think that's probably one of the positives of it.
I agree. I know that there's a lot of people that get a bit disheartened when it comes to workouts with movements that they can't do, and I've spoken to people in gyms about this for years. But one of the first time I got muscle ups was in 2015 in 15 point, I think it was 15.1, and it started with 7 ring muscle ups. So you couldn't even start the workout if you couldn't do 7 ring muscle ups. Then it was 100 double unders and 50 wall balls. I think that was the workout, and it was an AMRAP. And I managed to I managed to finish an entire round, right? But it was the first time I'd ever done ring muscle ups, and I wouldn't have done it if the alternative was basically me just standing under a set of rings, for that time. So I kind of got this, just everyone looking at you and shouting at you. You just find a way to get some muscle ups, and I appreciate that. If you can't pull up yet, you're probably unlikely to start getting higher school gymnastics, but that it was one of those moments. I think there's a lot of people have probably had this moment where they did something they didn't think they could do, and it was because of the Open that they got that. So I kind of always try and encourage people to frame it in that way. And I think a workout like this, where you get to finish with that, I mean, the challenge of that is that you're so fatigued by the time you get there that sometimes it means that you're maybe not as fresh as you could be when trying to attempt it. But I do think it's really a good opportunity for people to get their first muscle ups, or even first chest to bar. One thing I did want to ask you though, there does seem to be, and I know this is pretty common in 2026 CrossFit, seems to be a lot of chat around standards of movements, especially on the ring muscle ups. I wanted to get your perspective on what you thought around some of the movement standards for this and changes and things like that.
Oh, is it something specific this time? What people are?
The two things that I've seen the most conversation around are the lockout and the rings. So a lot of people doing a wide lockout rather than having shoulders over hands. And then the other thing is around the walking lunges and turning as you stand the last walking lunge up, which seems to be something that people are talking about, because supposedly the standard is that you're supposed to stand over the line, stand fully, then turn around and then turn back.
So I think going like the most known one, because it's shown up so much, like the ring muscle ups is an interesting one. So there's some interesting rules that have come with the ring muscle up in CrossFit. Like one interesting one is that like the feet can't pass like the height of the ring. And then the other being that you have to go through a portion of the dip as you go up. Then obviously like another common thing is that it's very easy on the rings to kind of push away as you're descending, so you don't get this full lockout at the top. And then, as you're saying, I imagine what's happening is people are getting fatigued. They're trying to recruit other musculature in order to finish out this rep. And obviously, if you've been dipping close, the next easiest thing is to try and get as wide as possible to go there. And there's it's an interesting one, that, because there's never really been a standard, I believe, about like how close to the rings have to be to the body in order to get that lockout to happen. So that's probably like I can see why that creates a bit of controversy, because I think you saw it in the Open announcement when the athletes are getting fatigued, they're kind of, the rings start going a bit, especially when you do those little like jump reps, like your dip's gone, you start kind of kipping, and as you kip, it gets wider as you go out. It also shortens the range a bit. But my guess is with no standard, no set standard, there's something you can't really enforce right now.
Yeah, I think there was some standards obviously with the workout release, and there was talk of shoulders being over hand position, which I think is why the discussions been kind of ramping up a little bit on it this week. But I guess just on a sport mechanics point of view, what's your viewpoint on what the standard should be? Do you think there's an issue with the hands creeping out, like if we're testing it as a sport, if we're trying to like have a fair playing field, or do you think the standard actually does need to be a bit stricter on these?
So it makes the rep easier because you're reducing the range of motion. But an interesting one I kind of put this down to is like the power snatch, for example. So it used to be that they make you bring your feet in under hips again when you finish the rep, and it kind of got taken out because it's a really hard thing to enforce. And I think the thing with putting a standard in, I think really you should only put the standard in if you can enforce it in a good way. And when you get these movements that, arguably they're objective, but often they become quite subjective to the judge. It's like, how far out are you going to allow the rings to go in order, and this is why I presume the power snatch example got there. So how far in do you have to bring the legs? And at a certain point, it's not going to become advantage to the athlete. It's not like they're going to be doing like an iron cross in order to get the lockout. But that caveat, I would probably say it's not necessarily something to add in as a standard because it's going to be hard to judge, and because most athletes will only go there at the very end. It's not going to be like a repeated thing when they're struggling to get lockout. And when they're struggling to get lockout, it's something that you kind of wait to quite clearly see. You can see the elbows going into extension. It probably adds too much confusion if you then go, well, are the rings moving out from the body or whatever that may be.
Yeah, got you. And last question on this. You're closest to the athletes. Do they kind of think about this when they see someone else repping out muscle ups? Is this something that goes through their mind where they're like, oh, they're catching a bit wide, or do they not even really think about it?
I think this is a generalization, but the first thought process is like, how does this affect me? So it's like, how is this related to them straight away? And I think that if the athlete has a tendency to do that, they would probably look at it in that way. But if the athlete doesn't have a tendency to do it, they probably don't. They probably don't look at it.
Yeah, fair.
It's just in answer to the other one about the lunges. I think this is the thing with CrossFit. Like, people always try to find a way to make the work around the edges some way, and you probably do save a couple of seconds by not having to fully extend after the last rep. And this is the hard thing with CrossFit, is there's no real standardization in terms of like throughout the years. And so all of a sudden you might test something with like, I don't know, even you test it with a handful of people, then all of a sudden you give it to 200,000 people, and there will be all these things that you haven't anticipated being done, which is where CrossFit has this like uncommon movement clause, which I think is, again, it's a bit ambiguous, but maybe a sensible thing they hold in their back pocket for these occasions.
For sure. And all I was going to add was that I think this is kind of maybe where, when we've talked about this a fair bit on the podcast, the difference between the training methodology and the sport, and where those edges blur in something like the Open.
Yeah, and this is where the Xenon that we talked about last time will be interesting. And Hyrox has shown that, because you get to learn from your mistakes. Like, I remember watching some of the first Hyrox races, and there's lots of, if you watch back, you already see the improvements they've been able to make. And it's a lot easier to make improvements because you keep doing it. It'd be interesting to see like the wall balls, but I know that they had a big incentive to be a lot stricter on the wall balls this year to kind of really reach that standard. And maybe they can introduce some technology or whatever it may be, and it'd be worth their investment because they're going to keep repeating it. Whereas, how often do we see an overhead walking lunge where you have so many short transitions in CrossFit?
Yeah, absolutely. Should we shift and have a look at the results for 26.2? Let me bring this up. So, looking at the women's leaderboards, a lot of Europeans again. I know we're sorry if you are a listener and you're from somewhere like Australia or the US, but we are very much a Europe biased podcast. But the French ladies at the moment on top for 26.2.
My guess
Alice
is
sorry, go on.
my guess is poor Alice is probably I might say this completely wrong, but it may well be a tie-break score that she has put in.
I was going to
But,
say
yeah.
540 is sensational. But yes, I think you're probably right looking at the 26.1 score. So the moment then, Claudia got, unless Alice is just a weapon when it comes to
Yeah, Alice really like excelled in this workout.
Yeah, she was like, wall-ball's not my friend, but gymnastics. So apologies, Alice, if you are a ninja and we've discredited you there. But otherwise, Claudia Gluck at the moment leading the way with 6:33, which is a really fast time. Then Alina Karatalia or Tala. Sorry,
yeah.
Alina, if I've butchered your name there, but sitting in second with 6:50, and then Lucy Campbell, another good result for her at 6:50. So strong results for the women here.
You also think with Lucy, like it's open announcement, first time doing it, and this is what I talked about. It's so hard to win an open workout from the announcement, because I imagine if Lucy repeated this again, she could find actually a better time, I think it actually shows just how good her time was at the open announcement, how strongly it's been holding.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're recording on Monday night, so there are still scores to come in. So this leaderboard could change, but yeah, that's a strong time. So it'll be interesting to see if she manages to keep in the top 5 for this one. A bit further down, we've got Maddie Sturr and Cara Milligan for Australia and USA, and then Amy Kringle. So Amy doing really well in this workout as well with a sub 7-minute time.
I have
just calling out a few of the top scores there.
Because it's going to be really interesting. Lucy's competing at Wodapalooza this weekend. Miriam's not, so he's got more opportunity for this final workout. Like points wise, obviously there's more people to come in, and it's most likely that Miriam's going to get suffer a bit more on the points. But who do you think is going to take
who's going to take the open? Well, let's why don't I shift the leaderboards overall, and we can have a look at the overall standings. So at the moment, it's Lucy in first, and then Miriam in second. So
isn't it crazy that all the way down to 7th currently is Europe? Yeah,
the women's side of the fence, they are doing bits on the European scene at the moment. It's unreal. Taylor Howe, good to see her up in 7th at the moment as well. So yeah, it's really cool to see just how strong the female side is when it comes to Europe.
How far down do we have to go to find an American? 13th.
Yeah, 13th with Maddie Fout. And sorry, Maddie, I'm not familiar with your work, so so we will I'm sure pay attention to her, see her later in the later stages. But yeah, even then, the next American isn't till we get to Paige Rogers in 20th. So there's only one US lady in the top 20, and then we've got Michelle Hayes and from New Zealand, and Annika Greer from Canada, as well as Ellie Turner and Emma Lawson. So Ellie Turner from Australia and Emma Lawson from Canada as well. So the rest are Europeans, which is amazing.
Yeah. European females have just dominated this sport for so long. I mean, Tia's the GOAT that has outshone, but aside from that, like the European female depth is just crazy that we've always had.
It's just unreal, right? So I think your question was, back to me, who's going to win the Open? Is it going to be Miriam or is it going to be Lucy?
Well, I tell you what, there are probably currently down to like 6th, maybe. I would say Bergros' time this week is not the best. That might take her along with Leia because more people are going to come in. But I tell you what, you've got Aline in there and Elena, who I would say there's 4 girls on the scores at the moment that could actually take this between Lucy, Miriam, Aline, and Elena. And it's going to be really interesting.
Absolutely. Do you know what? I think Miriam. I think I'd edge Miriam because I have a feeling that the next event's going to have something weightlifting focused, and knowing Miriam's strengths, I wouldn't put it. If there's a barbell involved, I'm going to say Miriam's going to win the Open again.
Okay, it's a good shout. But I'm gonna take the. I feel like you served me up a softball here, so I'm going to take Lucy. I'm not going to miss this opportunity.
Okay. We'll see next week who clinches it. And also, there, like we said, there are some other scores coming for 26.2. So I do think this top 10 is going to change somewhat. There, and we were just saying how many Europeans are in this top 20. That is also caveated the fact that there are probably some Americans, Australians, and other nationalities that haven't yet put their scores in for 26.2. So I think that might change. So watch this space, team. Okay, let's switch over to the men's side and have a look at 26.2. And I love to see it. Jonna Koskei is in the lead at the moment with 6:10. Great to see.
I tell you what, we have to do a huge shout out to Ole, because he is the 2025 Crown champion. So
amazing.
The Crown athletes are just representing. It's insane to see.
Very cool. Very cool. So again, if you're a first-time listener to the pod, please go back and listen to other episodes. And you're not sure what the Crown is, the program has a youth competition which basically hunts down and finds the best emerging CrossFit talent in the younger age categories. And Ollie Bosman won the male division this year. So very cool to see him come in second so far in this workout. Again, caveat, there are some scores to come in still, but 6:16 is a fast time.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah, so shout out to Ollie for that.
Question: do you think anyone's going to get sub 6?
I mean, I'm going to say yes.
Ooh.
And I could be wrong, but I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for it.
Nice. Follow-up question. Any guesses who you think it might be?
Ooh, he missed it last week, so I'm going to give it to him this week. I think it's going to be Colton.
Do you think?
His obviously his cycle speed of gymnastics is so good that I think, like, in the same way as Miriam, like, he's going to smash the first part. It's just those 20 ring muscle ups. So we were looking at this. Someone put a score up, like, we were kind of discussing like what's physically possible to go. So Miriam even with the no rep on the lunges was around 4:30 finishing. So in theory, that whether we know that 4:30 is possible, the big question is, can you then hang on for 20 ring muscle ups at the end? And some people are great at ring muscle ups, and you still got quite a lot of time. So I do think it's possible that we might see a 5 on the leaderboard, and I think someone like Colton, or there might also be some, like you mentioned earlier, gymnastic ninjas that are just can hold on and keep going on this stuff. It's a crazy time discrepancy again. You've got like Yonni down in at the moment at 6:10, and you've got some great athletes that are like 90 seconds off his time in a pretty classic short workout. Yeah,
and I was going to actually ask on the workout, because you can actually see, especially in some of these results, quite, obviously we've got Lucy and Miriam on the female side who were just like bang both workouts to a very high standard, but on the men's you can see some real, like, the top 5 were not the top 5 in workout 1, so there's quite a big separation between those two. I know that there's been a fair bit made on some podcasts about how workout one was harder for the guys, and potentially, I mean, there was some quite big comments about it perhaps being scaled for women.
What I saw on the Mayhem podcast, and they were talking about how it was triple scaled, and then Angelo made the point that it was quadruple scaled. But actually, if you think about it, there is a fifth element of scaling in there, because as they do the step overs with the ball, they also have the reduced box. So you could make the argument that it's kind of scaled 5 times in essence. This has always been an interesting discussion we've had with wall balls. Like, why is it lighter and shorter? And I think one of the reasons is probably the adoption of. I think there's 2 things. If you look back at the history of CrossFit 20 years ago, females in training was nowhere near as popular as it is now. And therefore the adoption of females doing CrossFit was less, and so there was it was just a less of an athlete pool that was there. Whereas today, that's just not the case, and so we should start a petition to take the scaling away from females to make us all feel better.
Yeah, I mean. I do think that look, I think the quadruple scale that they were talking about is maybe a bit strong, but I do think that, I mean, if you've trained with a very strong female athlete and you've done wall balls next to them, and there's a wall ball box jump workout, chances you're going to lose that workout. So I do think it probably needs to be reviewed, like you say. The strength of the athletes, the power, they can move the ball so well. But it was just interesting to see that on the guy side, how, for instance, Dallin Pepper came 5th in this workout, but came 304.
It's also interesting that Dallin didn't finish the first workout. I'd have thought that'd been a great workout for him.
Yeah, same. But there's a few like Jay Crouch as well, came in 50th, didn't finish the workout.
It's interesting.
So it was just kind of interesting to me to see that there's quite a big disparity between the result, that their performance from 1 to 2. And the other thing I was going to ask as well, because one of the things that we've been talking about in some of the competitions recently is how programming has started to bias the bigger athlete. How do you feel about these first 2 workouts in that regard?
No, I don't think it has in these first 2 workouts, but I think if you were to ask people, to describe these, they go, it's classic CrossFit. And I think that's the interesting thing, is these 2 first workouts, classic CrossFit, but you see some of the big names in there. And I think this is also a bit of a thing, is that it's always been considered that for the open, you should be good at high rep movements. Then as you get to semis, it's in a gym, but it'd be probably slightly heavier. And then, also it showed quarterfinals. Then when it was online semis, and then you move on to these different stages, and things get gradually more complex until you get to the games. But I don't necessarily agree with the hypothesis that things have to get heavier in order to get harder. I don't know if there's so many examples of workouts that are lighter, high rep, and just really destroy the athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. And
not in a bad, you know what I mean? It gives you that. You don't have to go heavier in order to get the stimulus or to be able to find the fittest. And then that's kind of the argument with machines. It's the same kind of thing. Typically, there's a reason that they have weight classes in rowing and different machine-based sports, because it gives you an advantage.
Yeah, that's the thing I've been pleased to see in the first 2 workouts. I mean, I think personally feel like the first workout had a few too many wall balls in it, but that's a personal opinion, by the by. But yeah, it's kind of nice to see that their simple functional fitness so far ticking the boxes of the methodology really nicely, and still testing and challenging all athletes. So it's really cool. Looking at the overall leaderboard for the guys, Jeffrey Adler sits at the top of it at the moment. And then Peter Ellis outside Australia. Ioannakowski's in third. Great to see Iona up there. James Sprague in fourth. Feel like, I mean, this might just be me, but I feel like James has gone a bit under the radar this Open, but he's snuck into fourth.
Yeah, I mean, he's such an impressive athlete. Like, he's not your classic CrossFit build, but still manages to just perform, in squat-based workouts, or you'd say with his morphology, he's not necessarily built for workouts like this with the chest to bars, the ring muscle ups, etc. But he still manages to place so high.
Yeah, 15th finish for him. And then Nika, or can you help me with his surname?
Mazar, he's a program athlete, so I should. An interesting fact though, I will tell you about the first name. Is it's spelt Nika but pronounced Nico?
Oh,
which makes it very confusing.
There you go. For everyone listening, Nico Mazrisade.
Yeah.
Sorry, bud, if I've hashed your name there, but from Georgia, sitting in fifth in the Open at the moment with an 11th place finish in 26.2 and 14th in 26.1. So doing great, going great guns there, and awesome to hear that he's a program athlete. And then we have Harry Lightfoot in sixth. Sorry.
Yeah, he's not qualified this yet to the game, so he's still in his rookie. He's kind of close at French last year. So it'd be interesting to see if he can make it through.
Yeah, amazing. Well, we'll be keeping an eye on Nico now, and hopefully bring him up on the podcast again. And then Harry Lightfoot in sixth, which is great to see. So we've got a few guys in the top six at the moment on the gents. And then Enrico Zanoni is in 10th at the moment. So another European athlete rounding out the top 10. So not quite as strong as on the female side, but definitely getting some more European athletes up and amongst it on the Open.
Yeah, and it's an interesting, because the one argument we've kind of always had on the guys' side is we're not necessarily as strong as the Europeans. So it's interesting, is that reflected like in, if you we should speak to Mike from Known and Knowable. Be like, it's an interesting stat. Like, if you take these workouts that we would say, are more high rep body weight dependent, does Europe classically do better than the workouts that are then heavier, etc.? Oh, sorry, I just clicked on something. Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you, and we can still see you.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I clicked onto my my headphones clicked onto my phone.
All good. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because like you said, we do seem to do well in these types of workouts from a European perspective, and whether the heavy machines or heavy barbells start to skew that, it'd be really interesting to see whether there's any data around that for sure.
And this would be the interesting thing next week, like if the prediction's right that it's going to be heavier with a barbell, do we then see like a very different picture for the results?
Absolutely. Any predictions for who you think is going to win on the men's side?
When Jeffrey Adler's in shape and in form, he's pretty unstoppable. And based on these first two results, top 10, 26.1, and now we're going to predict he's going to be in and around top 10, if not top 5 for 26.2. So it's good. Peter Ellis, I don't know as well. We know, Yonni with if it goes heavier barbell, then it might get tricky. We could probably take it down. If we look at the 26.2, is Ryan Haynes. I also don't know. Ben Fowler's competed at a couple of competitions, so maybe down to this maybe Tudor's very good with the barbell. So I'd say down to 9th, with some exceptions. They've got the opportunity to take the win, and it's pretty decent. It's like $15,000 prize money. So I think this is the Open worth repeating? Well, if you've got an opportunity to win $15,000, probably is.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, look, we've got one more week to go. Like you said, it's Wodapalooza weekend as well, so we've got lots of action. I thought I quickly mentioned this, but the elite individuals has been put out recently. We won't go over all of them, but that is on the Wodapalooza Instagram and for the elite teams as well. So if you want to know who's competing on the elite individuals and the elite teams, that's the LATAM Cup. That's all on their Instagram. But we should probably have a chat about this news that broke last week, which is quite big news, that Don Fall, who is the CEO of CrossFit, has stepped down. It got announced last week, and then the news said that it was going to be enacted on the 6th of March, which was Friday, was going to be his last day. So now CrossFit is looking for a new CEO. What did you make of this?
I mean, it's just super strange. Like during the Open, steps down. I mean, it's just weird. One of the big things when he first came in was talking about transparency. Like we're going to be transparent in this, transparent in that. And it's like, stepping down, done, out. And we do get some kind of statement, but it's lacking a lot of details and information as to why this happened. Did he step down? Was he encouraged to step down? Was there some kind of maybe that he met some kind of bonus criteria set by the board that he achieved with revenue? It's just hard to know what the reason is for stepping down now, but the middle of the Open seems like a strange time to do it. I know. I think even ironic, even though the sports and the business are not one and the same, CrossFit does kind of have a season. And it seemed to be that things tend to change like after the games or in and around the games time. So stepping down this early is an interesting one.
I was going to say that the timing seems really odd as well. So, yeah, I echo that. It's also strange that the noise just before the Open at the end of last year was building and building and building around the CrossFit sale. And then a few months later, in the middle of sort of, like you say, the kickoff to the CrossFit year, effectively, he decides to step down, or potentially there was some pressure applied. It is all very up in the air and very vague. And yeah, it's interesting to try and pick it apart. What do you think happens next?
I think this is where CrossFit's obviously very different from back in the day when it was owned by Greg Glassman, or when it was Greg and the partnership they had. It's like it's moved into this very corporate world that I think have very objective numbers, that probably want to put someone in who's, my guess is they've announced the sale, so they want a CEO who has experience in getting this sale through in order to present it in the best way possible. It's kind of, I would say, like a logical thing from the board to want. Is that the best thing for the CrossFit space as it is now? I would say the intention of someone just wanting to get through the sale in a good way is probably not. Probably needs like a long-term plan and long-term growth, and someone who's like, one, has experience, and two, obviously very passionate about seeing it grow. And being able to put in the work in order to make that happen. I'm not sure. I mean, what are your thoughts around it?
I think you're right that I'd be really surprised if this wasn't linked to the sale, and that it was perhaps part of getting someone on board that could facilitate that sale. Or the flip side is perhaps it's a change of heart, and actually we actually want to grow this thing or take it in a different direction. We want to get someone who reflects our intent around that. But I have a feeling that it would be linked to that either in one way or one shape or form. But it's hard to say because, like you say, there's so much ambiguity around the statement and the direction of the company. Yeah. It's hard to say what's going on.
You've also got to think though that the board right now are, surely they must be looking at other fitness aspects that are doing so well, High Rocks being the main one. And you would think that they must be asking the question of like, well, maybe there is more in this than we're realizing right now. And I think one thing that's unified a lot of people in the space is seeing the potential of CrossFit. I think a lot of people, and especially through that momentum that we've always spoken about, there was a common goal that everyone saw this huge potential of the space and the sport that never necessarily felt realized. And I think having a group on board that can help realize that potential would be very exciting.
I do too. Yeah. Well, hopefully, there's some positive direction for the business, and that there's a new direction, or they get the right person in to help drive CrossFit forward. But yeah, really interesting. It felt weird as well because we hadn't really seen much of Donfall for quite a while. When he got announced, I feel like we saw him all the time. And then for the last year, I don't feel like Don's been that front and center as well. So wish him well, but yeah, it was a bit of an odd one from my perspective.
I think it'll also be interesting to see if they just like promote someone internally, just to I suppose fill the gap of the sale if the sale is still happening.
Yeah. Well, we'll like everyone else in the space, keep an eye on it, and I'm sure this probably won't be the last time we talk about the leadership of CrossFit or the ownership of CrossFit. I'm sure there'll be some more twists and turns coming. And before we wrap up for the day, you mentioned a story about the French Throwdown. So I wanted to just ask you what's gone on there, because I didn't see this. So I just wanted to see your thoughts.
I put the Instagram post in the chat, but I can't remember exactly when it was. I think it was on the weekend. The French Throwdown announced that Roman Khrennikov has got an invitation to the competition, and and this just set up like a whole way. So, like other athletes, including Moritz, who last year when he was with us, he ended up winning French, and he sent them a message saying, "Hey, are you going to give invites out?" So you got Moritz there. One French, sends them a DM, and on the DM they reply being like, no, the only way to get there is like through our qualifier or through finishing like top in quarterfinals in the like top 20 in Europe in the quarterfinals.
Okay.
So then this announcement comes out that they've just like invited Khrennikov.
No way.
And obviously everyone is like, well, what do you mean? And so, you got all the athletes posting, like all the European athletes are not very happy about it. But, I think if you go in the chat, there's this, can I bring it up actually? Yeah, I'll show you this here.
I've got it. I'll put it across now. Sorry, if you were just listening, we are just pulling this up on the screen. So if you go and look at the video, you'll actually be able to see it, what we're talking about. Here we go. I got it.
Yeah, so there are two paths to qualify for French Throwdown. Top 20 worldwide on the French Throwdown qualifier, pretty straightforward. And then top 20 Europe in the quarterfinals. Again, everyone's like, okay, like the clarity, etc. Then, they kind of go into details on the rule book that this is what it says in the rule book. And then Roman ends up getting this invite. And, I'm sure it's no coincidence that he happens to be a Mayhem athlete. Mayhem happened to be programming in close relationship to French. I mean, it's just pretty... The hard thing is there's like such a long history of this happening throughout the sport. And it's just pretty shitty for the athletes. Like, you want to think that you're competing on this fair playing field, that everything feels just. You go, well, I think everyone accepts. Like, if you say you've got to do the qualifier, then we do the qualifier. But then you just go and randomly invite people who happen to be following the program. And also, Krennikov was in Spain last year because Mayhem program Madrid came over, took the spot from there, even not as a European athlete. So it opens up like a whole world of discussions about like how these qualifications process work, how do we have any standardization. But if I'm honest, it's like the same story that we've been having for decades. It's like, okay, well, another instance that's honestly just a bit shitty for the athletes. But what's going to happen? Like, the competition is going to run, the athletes are going to go because they want to get their opportunity for the game spot or get the prize money or whatever it'll be. So in essence, there's no real consequences for doing things like this.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what Brent, over all the years with the PFA, etc., wanted to try and do. He understood that the only real way to make change was to have the athletes in unison. But as to bring an English saying into the podcast, it's kind of like herding cats. You're just getting any kind of unity or voice together. Because I don't think these things should happen, but they do happen all the time, and they don't really seem to change. Because I don't know if the French, apart from like athletes giving them shit on social, I don't really see any consequence for them.
And the reality really is that by the time we probably get to the games, a lot of people won't really remember it. I mean, I'm sure there'll be athletes who, lose out as a result. We certainly will. But on the wider picture, unfortunately, a lot of things like this do seem to, we've got, short memories and things move on. And like you say, there's no real consequences to it. And we've talked at length about things like this coming back to HQ, CrossFit Company, and what their direction is. And if they're not setting out strict guidelines around these things or having consequences for people who are breaking rules that they set, and they're not really policing these things, then it's hard to have uniformity and a solid structure, I guess.
And it is in the same vein of like the workouts getting released. Like, how many years and years and years and years are there of just workouts being released? And it's okay, the French throwdown workouts were released for a qualifier, and you go, okay, the implications are not as big as when it's the games workouts. We've seen so many examples year after year of certain people getting access to information because of friendships, and then using that information to their advantage, and there's zero consequences. I remember one year, I can't remember the year, but basically everything got leaked. Like, the whole semi-finals got leaks. They had to publish it because everyone knew. And like, then there was a statement made, from this point on, we're going to be like super strict on everything. Nothing's going to be released. And then literally the games, like workouts, were being released. And obviously, you hear this information. It then came to light that the workouts released were the real workouts. So people had access to this, like, at least a month before other people got the publicly available information. And it's not fair. But there's no consequences as to anything that happens. So like, the athletes still compete, the athletes still go to do this thing, and so it just continues, really.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, and I didn't realize how widespread it was in other competitions outside of the games. I actually was talking to a local athlete at one of the gyms I train at, and she was mentioning, I think it was French or one of the competitions, and saying that people already knew the qualifiers, and someone who's trying to qualify, and also some athletes who are towards their 30s or slightly older, they only got a few more years being able to potentially qualify for some of the bigger competitions in the games and stuff, and might miss out because they didn't have the advantage of knowing a qualifying workout. So it does have ripples to individuals, which is sad.
And I think it's just, there's this common, or a very common consensus of people in fitness as well. It's like people just want a fair race, and it's not fair. That tends to piss people off, especially when it's these, silly little things that go around. And I think this is where, someone leading the company in that way, like a new CEO coming in and actually taking these aspects and trying to improve the sport. And I would shout out to Hyrox, because I think that they really do listen to the athletes, and they're in constant communication, trying to find out how to improve things. I think the Hyrox's job is easier because it's standardized format, so it makes it easy to improve each time. But there are so many things, like from equipment use to this subject we can go on for a long time. I mean, we spoke with Alex from Concept regarding this, but like the sleds at the games, knowing that it was probably due to the condensation on the floor that some lanes of sleds were easier.
Well, even the pegboard last year, and apparently
the slippiness of the pegboard. Yeah,
I haven't seen the documentary yet, but apparently there was a clip of Tia sort of sharing her opinions with Dave about it after the workout. I think that clip's gone up on social media as well. So yeah, it's not isolated, and it often doesn't. It kind of gets a bit of a every lane's the same, just deal with it kind of attitude a lot of the time.
Yeah, and so I think this is the big thing as well with if we, like the three goats of CrossFit with Froning, Fraser, and Tia, because they've had stuff go against them as well, but they've been so good that it's not mattered. That they've always managed to win, and I would not say because, but despite of the programming. No matter what was thrown at them, no matter the mistakes, the penalties, etc., they could just come back and win. And I think the argument is because they're not only the best, they're like a step percentage, like 10 to 20% better than the second place. But where these things have a humongous impact is for everyone. I would say at the games now, because you don't have one of the big three who are like a percentage step above everyone else, that the leaderboard does get determined by these things as well, be it that in one of the workouts the leader ends up getting an easy lane and the second place end up getting a slow lane. So you're not really objectively testing the fitness of these people because you've got these other obstacles in the way that are impacting those results. So it becomes not a fair or legitimate test in that way. I mean, then you get into this whole interesting debate, which less so now, it's speaking about for years, of like, well, is it just entertainment or is it legitimacy of the test? Like, what matters more? Does it really matter what 10 tests you give the athletes? You kind of got this like random mix of what we would associate with CrossFit. Who's defining if it's balanced or not? Okay, we just got this entertainment, and then that serves its purpose, and we move on.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic and something we sort of visit a lot in our discussions, and I'm sure we will going forward. But like you say, it's because obviously you're connected to loads of athletes and have kind of been on this on multiple different things as a fan, like I am, and someone involved in the sport, but then also from your profession and from dealing with athletes and having to watch what they go through and seeing it from both sides. So I think it's something worth talking about. And a lot of the time, I think actually this discussion ends up going towards standards and things like that a bit more than actually this standardization, the standards of the actual sport, rather than just like the standards of movements within the sport. And I think I hope that it does get addressed by CrossFit or some of the competitions in some way going forward, because like you say, Brent's had a crack at trying to sort stuff out, and it does dilute especially when I know it's not as big as it used to be, but when you're saying that the winner is the fittest on earth and crowning someone with that kind of gravitas of a title, to then have lots of things that people can point at and be like, well, this and that and this and that, it doesn't help.
And also I think that because always the arguments being okay for the unknown and unknowable, like preparing for this test, which I get. I just wonder if for example, say you've got a list of 30-40 movements that could appear in the season. They're standardized, etc., etc. Then the athletes are at least like preparing for this. It makes the judging life easier. I think some of the biggest judging issues have happened at the games where the judges get briefed at the same time as the athletes. A classic one was the Bosman program. It's like strict parallel handstand push-ups, but they didn't want to use an object for the head to touch. And so he had to get the judges, and some of the judges like leaning down on the floor. Some of the I think it was like wall-facing plate handstand, or whatever it was. You've got judges looking from all different angles, a new movement that just randomly been introduced, and there's just no time for the athletes and the judges to really learn this, and it's just boom, and it creates, all you got to do is go and watch the video and see the discrepancy in judging, and that leads to the problem that we just mentioned, that if the objective is to find the fittest, you need the test in order to do that. The test can't be biased, because then you're missing your objective.
Absolutely. Well, look, I'm sure we'll talk about this again. I know, I'm sure people listening as well have got their own opinions. And if you do have an opinion, one, you can join us at 6 p.m. UK time, 7 p.m. Spanish time on the program Academy YouTube channel, where we are now live streaming. If you're listening to us on your usual podcast feed, you can also either comment on there, or there's an email address in the description. Feel free to shoot us an email. Let us know your thoughts. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Actually, it's a wide topic, and something that you can tell we're quite passionate about, and having the sport be kind of fair and standardized. And that's why Xenon coming out and that idea has got a lot of people talking, because it's a standardized test that is more CrossFit leaning than some of the other ones out there. So it'll be really interesting to see how that comes about and how athletes fare with that. But look, we're wrapping up now. John, is there anything else you want to touch on before we do close out?
No, I could go down the rabbit hole now, so better we leave it.
Okay, we'll pause that discussion for next week or the week after. As mentioned, Wodapalooza this weekend, the final of the CrossFit Open as well, the last workout, announcing Thursday. So next week, I'm sure we'll have loads to talk about around those things, and whether CrossFit decide to employ a new CEO or sell, or who knows what's happening. So I'm sure there'll be loads to talk about next week. And yeah, thank you very much for joining us. John, thank you as ever.
Thank you.
And yeah, we'll catch you next week, team.